How are you, ladies and gentlemen? It is a beautiful day because Bulls basketball is back. And after that incredible win that we got to see last night, not only that, but it is Wednesday, and every Wednesday I feature your Bulls hot takes from the week. So if you're new to the channel, feel free to leave any hot takes you have in the comments below, and I just might include them in next week's video. But with that said, let's get into these takes, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing very well. Let's get us kicked off with our first hot take, which comes to us from Shishno. Shortly after the Bulls signed Zach LaVine to a max extension, Nikola Vucevic will sign a 4-year, $100 million extension with the team. Well, I briefly addressed this topic of Vucevic and an extension for him in a prior video. Agreed, Zach is going to get a max contract. It would be really unfortunate if he went to another team, but for Vucevic, he's got 2 more years left on his deal. So based on what you're saying here, the Bulls would offer him an extension next offseason when they re-sign Zach to the tune of 4 years, $100 million, which would mean they would have Vucevic under contract until he's 35, making around $25 million a year, which is a pretty hefty price point for someone at that age. Granted, big men are generally a little more durable in terms of, extending their careers and their prime windows, especially for big men who don't necessarily have to rely on their athleticism as much, which is definitely the case with Vucevic. For me personally, I actually don't see the Bulls extending Vucevic this upcoming offseason anyway, unless he absolutely balls out this season and is a critical piece to the team in making a deep playoff run. I really think that likely they'll wait for his contract to expire, which ends in 2023, and reassess from there and see how he's performing and decide if it still makes sense to offer him a big contract like that. Because at that time, the landscape of the league and the Bulls team anyway, for where they are at, could look very different, and the Bulls front office might be repositioning themselves to get a little younger, to further build around Zach and Lonzo, and even Patrick Williams for that matter, all guys still in their 20s. So I think the front office is going to be pretty calculated with Vucevic's contract, and I'm sure extension discussions and negotiations will happen, and they will be had next offseason, but they ultimately won't come to an agreement for Vucevic, not next offseason anyway. Next, we've got VK Doom. Patrick Williams and Coby White will both be traded for a superstar next season. It depends on what type of superstar. I think most of us would agree that, at least at this time, Patrick Williams is likely untouchable. But every player has a price in terms of who they can be traded for. Like, if somehow the Bucks were okay with trading Giannis for Coby and Patrick, yeah, you're going to jump all over that, but it would never happen. Or guys like Luka Doncic, you bet I'm taking that trade. But honestly, there aren't too many superstars I would trade both Patrick and Coby White for, outside of the really big names, of course. And again, teams aren't just going to give up their superstars for guys like Coby and Patrick. It's just unrealistic to think that, unless you're talking about a very disgruntled star who, might be forcing their way out of the organization, say a guy like Zion Williamson, potentially Bradley Beal, although I don't think Beal really would fit well with this team. So I just can't see that happening, not only because the front office sees great potential in Patrick Williams, but more so because other teams aren't going to be willing to let their superstars go for a trade package that is that small. Next, we've got, I'm a 2025 pick, no cap. Well, unfortunately for you, the Bulls don't have their 2025 pick, but the take is Coach Donovan is actually the X factor this season instead of P. Will and others. Well, I don't know if many people would be considering Patrick to be the X factor necessarily, although his success and potentially breaking out would be enormous for this team, in addition to all the other pieces that they've brought in. But Billy Donovan being the X factor, I put out a video earlier this week talking about how, this is a make or break year for Billy in terms of his future in the NBA, and he very well could be the X factor because the team has talent, and it's going to be on him to harness that talent and get the most out of the group of guys and ensuring that they fit well together to win consistently. There is going to be a lot of pressure on him this season because he got a significantly upgraded roster than he had last season, and arguably the most talented roster he has ever had in his NBA career, aside from that very first year coaching the Thunder with Kevin Durant and Westbrook, in which they went to the Western Conference Finals. Next, we've got the Benny. The Bulls' biggest mistake this offseason was not re-signing Theis. Keeping him would have made us title contenders. I do think this was one move that I wish the front office could have managed to hold on to, but I certainly don't think keeping Theis would have made the Bulls title contenders. I do think Theis would have been huge for this team to give them more front court depth, more strong defense and rim protection, but the fact of the matter is the Bulls, with all their other moves that they made, just simply wouldn't have been able to afford him. You know, the Rockets offered Theis a pretty big payday for someone of his caliber, and one the Bulls simply couldn't match or offer more. So I don't think that the Bulls just let Theis walk. I think they absolutely wanted to keep him, but with all the other guys and moves and plans that they had in place for free agency, and with the Rockets offering Theis a big contract, they knew they couldn't keep him. You know, keeping Theis would have made this Bulls team even better because of the added length, but I don't think a guy like Theis would have put them over the edge to make them title contenders by any means. Next, we've got Marcelo Spirizzi. The Bulls win the chip this year. Bulls Central has to get a Bulls tattoo. If they don't, I have to do 50 push-ups. Listen, man, if the Bulls win the title this season, I'm saying it here and now, I will get a logo tattoo and live stream it for all of you guys to see. You have yourself a deal, my guy. Remember this video, save it, mark it, do whatever you have to do. I would love it if the Bulls somehow broke out and won the championship. I would gladly get a tattoo if that was the case. Next, we've got Jan Miller, LaVine, and Pat gets traded for Zion. Whoa there, Tiger. First of all, no. That's too much for Zion. Look, I know Zion is an incredible talent, a generational talent, and it's very possible he could become the face of the league in the future, but his injuries do concern me a bit about his long-term health. Now, I had a couple people asking me about what I thought of a trade for LaVine for Zion straight up, and I know some Bulls fans aren't gonna like to hear this because I've heard some people say that would be a horrible trade for the Bulls. Well, you have to remember, Zion was touted as being the next LeBron-level player coming out of the NBA draft, and so far, again, despite some injuries that he's shown, he is capable of becoming that type of player with his elite athleticism, scoring ability, crashing the boards, defense, and overall versatility. Not only that, but he's also 5 years younger than LaVine, only being 21 years old and not even being in his prime yet. Granted, LaVine could very well get even better, and I believe he will, so this isn't a hard pass trade like some Bulls fans are saying. First of all, it would never happen, so it's a moot point, but Zion is an incredible talent, and to say that trading Zach is too much for someone like Zion Williamson, in my opinion, is short-sighted. But in this scenario, you also added Patrick Williams, which in my view, that puts it over the top for me and not worth it for someone like Zion, just because Patrick is even younger than Zion is, and although Patrick might not have the type of potential Zion does, you're also adding in Zach LaVine to that trade deal. So in short, no, I don't think most Bulls fans, they would scoff at this potential trade, even if it was for someone like Zion. Next, we've got James Nieto with a medium hot take. Bulls will win 5+ games in a row for the first time since the Niko Mirotic era. It's funny you called it the Mirotic era because, yes, I believe the Bulls won like 7 or 8 games in a row in that first season of the rebuild after the Jimmy Butler trade, when the team was really being led by then rookie Lauri Markkanen, since LaVine was still rehabbing his ACL injury. But yes, I think, there's no question the Bulls will at least have a 5-game winning streak at some point this season, especially after what we saw last night. I mean, they could very well start off the season going 5-0, given the first 5 games are against relatively easy teams. They're playing Detroit twice, New Orleans, Toronto, and New York in their first 5 games. The only one I could see them potentially losing is against the Knicks, but, even that one, they should be able to win because it's going to be at home. So this year, yes, with the talent the Bulls have, they should be able to win 5 or more straight games this season. Next, we've got Sei Ongunbui. I'm so bad at pronouncing names. The Chicago Bulls should try to sign Noah Vonleh to pick up their backup power forward position and waive Stanley Johnson or Derrick Jones Jr. Well, they're certainly not going to waive Derrick Jones Jr. because he's on a guaranteed contract. Not only that, but he's a much better player than Noah Vonleh, even if Noah Vonleh is a better fit as a big man. Stanley Johnson, because, he's not on a guaranteed contract yet anyway, that might make it a little more in terms of sense. But to be honest, I would just rather keep Stanley and use his defense, even though he's a bit undersized for a power forward role. Vonleh has just been too inconsistent throughout his career. And yes, he played for the Bulls a little bit last year in the preseason before getting waived after getting COVID, but I don't think he would be the answer for this team to give us some depth. Like, I wouldn't prioritize Vonleh over Stanley or Alice Johnson because you would really have to waive one of those 2 players in order to make room for him. Next, we've got the Bulls will make a trade deadline deal to reacquire Thaddeus. Man, as much as I would love for this to happen, I can't see it working out unless, of course, the Spurs waive Thaddeus and making him a free agent, and then the Bulls were able to get him on a very cheap deal, because the fact of the matter is the Bulls cannot afford his $14.2 million salary that they themselves fully guaranteed and then traded him to the Spurs as a part of a sign and trade deal with DeMar DeRozan. I think most can agree that still having Thaddeus on this team would have been amazing in terms of a fit to have him come off the bench at the power forward spot. Just because he was great at it last season, and now especially with the fact that the Bulls absolutely need front court depth, it would have been so key to have a guy like that in that role. But in order for the Bulls to free up enough cap space to bring in guys like Lonzo and DeMar, they had to shed some salary. And one way for them to be able to do that was by getting out of Thaddeus' contract, unfortunately. So no, I don't see the Bulls making a trade for him at the deadline, because they don't have the cap space to take him on, or it just wouldn't make sense to trade the pieces on this team that we already have to actually make the salaries match to bring him back. Let's do one more, and this one comes to us from YOLO Gamer 101. Billy Donovan wins Coach of the Year. I mean, if the Bulls finish as a top 3 seed in the East, then I think he will get it, because you talk about going from being a lottery team all the way to one of the best teams in the East. Yeah, you're going to get Coach of the Year consideration. The question is, can the Bulls actually do that? Will they actually finish as a top 3 seed? I personally think a 5 seed or in that area is more realistic, just because I think it will take some time for these players to get acclimated with one another, although based on what we saw last night, it looks like that's already the case. But if the Bulls do finish as a 5 seed, you know, he likely will get some votes for Coach of the Year, but winning it could probably be hard to come by being as a 5 seed. Anything less than a 6 seed, then no, he won't even get a single vote for Coach of the Year, as the league will really expect more from the Bulls, this Bulls team anyway, with the added talent that they have. I'll end it there for this week though, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and again, feel free to leave any hot takes that you have below in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.